The year is 1991, and Sega has released a revolutionary arcade cabinet like no other. And of course, the game I'm talking about is Time Traveler, the world's first holographic video game. When I first saw this cabinet as a kid, it blew my mind. And the team at the Strong National Museum of Play in Rochester, New York, recently gave me a chance to go behind the scenes and replay this strange arcade game one more time. You might be asking yourself, what is a hologram? Well, basically, a hologram is a 3D image drawn with light in a three-dimensional space, just like the scenes in Iron Man. Time Traveler is called a holographic video game, although it really isn't. What it does do, though, is create an optical illusion that kind of makes it look like a real holographic image. Before we get into the game, let's take a closer look at the cabinet. It really looks like something from the future, or at least the future back then. How it works is it uses a special concave mirror to reflect the image from a CRT monitor onto a stage in front of you. The reflected image creates this so-called holographic image. The game itself was designed by Rick Dyer, who along with Don Bluth co-designed the game Dragon's Lair, but we'll get back to that title in a little bit. First, let's talk about how the holographic images look. Now in person, this effect is pretty impressive. When I first saw this game, it really felt like a team of 5-inch high actors were playing out a story right in front of me. Seeing the effect through a camera, though, doesn't really do the illusion justice. Now, in the game, you play as a cowboy named Marshall Graham, who must travel through different time periods to stop the evil Volcor. Your task is to save Princess Kyla and stop Volcor from using his time disruptor to unravel time. I have to be honest, it's not very fun to play. Time Traveler is an interactive, full-motion video game. Clips play out in front of you, and it's up to you to know when to move your character using the 4-way joystick or use the attack button. If you make the correct input at the right time, you'll see the next part of the level and keep progressing. If you miss an input though, then you'll have to go to a death sequence and you'll have to try again. Or if you used up all your lives, it's game over. Unless of course, you use a reversal cube, which gives you a chance to redo an incorrect input. Now for those of you that enjoy Dragon's Lair, you're looking at a game with almost identical mechanics. One wrong move and you instantly lose a life. I'm personally not really a big fan of this gameplay though. I find it tedious, overly difficult, and very unresponsive. Although in Time Traveler they do guide new players with a training mode and give you more visual hints through the levels, which in my opinion is a bit of an improvement over Dragon's Lair, giving newcomers a better chance of understanding how to play. However, the positioning of the controls can be just a little awkward. You have the joystick in the dead center of the control board, and you have an attack button on your right, and on the very left you have a reversal cube button. Now, I think the reversal cube button should have been on the same side as the attack button, giving you direct access to probably one of the most important functions in the game, but they didn't do that. The visuals in this game are live action sequences with actors dressed up in costumes and some light digital effects over top. The game was so large that it needed to use Laserdisc technology to run. And for those of you that don't know, a Laserdisc is basically an analog optical storage format that came before the DVD. It's not the first time that Laserdiscs were used for arcade games, and it wasn't even the first time that Rick Dyer had programmed a game for Laserdisc. Dragon's Lair in 1983 was one of the first Laserdisc-based arcade games. They used the new, larger format to make a game completely from hand-animated clips. Every frame of Dragon's Lair looks beautiful, and the gameplay was more rigid than most, but they made something that looked like nothing else. Now with Time Traveler, they again sacrificed gameplay for spectacular-looking visuals, and at the time, I'd never seen anything quite like this before. The hologram look was very cool, but while that might have looked great in 1991, unfortunately it doesn't really hold up today. The video quality has not really stood the test of time, and the performances are incredibly cheesy. The animation in Dragon's Lair, by comparison, is classic and still looks high quality even after all these years. Although Time Traveler saw initial success in arcades, the attraction quickly faded away. The hook of the cabinet is the novelty of seeing real people in hologram format, but by 1991, we had already seen many arcade games that had digitized actors in them, like Terminator 2 Judgment Day and Narc. Digital actors in full-motion video in a game had been seen before, and the sacrifices they had to make with the gameplay to accommodate Time Traveler's visuals may be really really wasn't worth it. The final blow for Time Traveler was that arcade owners started getting rid of Laserdisc games once and for all. The unreliable hardware was simply causing way more headaches than traditional arcade games. But attempting to keep their new holographic arcade cabinets in business, in 1992, Sega repurposed the cabinets with a new arcade game. Owners could buy a conversion kit that would allow them to scrap the finicky Laserdisc player and install Sega's new holographic sprite-based fighter, Holosseum. And folks, let me tell you, Holosseum is simply not a good game. Although the visuals are still holographic, playing a fighting game with a single attack button feels, well, hollow. It failed to attract fans of other fighting games like the very popular Street Fighter II and fell into obscurity, and there's probably a couple of reasons for that. Holosseum doesn't feature live digital actors like Time Traveler did, and the graphics just don't look that good. But perhaps what makes it most irritating to play, your characters pretty much stayed in a very fixed position because they couldn't move too far away due to the holographic technology and the distances that would actually have limitations for. This really sucks, and as far as fighting games go, this is probably one of the worst games that Sega has ever produced in that genre. Holosseum and Time Traveler never did sway the video game industry towards holographic games, and because of the short lifespan of original Laserdisc technology, Time Traveler is slowly being lost to time. Kind of ironic. But in 2000, one company did try to bring Time Traveler back. Digital Leisure released a version that you could play on your DVD player or PlayStation 2. It even had a stereoscopic 3D mode, but it just added a 3D background to the existing game and didn't really look that great. It came bundled with a pair of red and blue 3D glasses so that you could kind of get the full effect, but I really wouldn't recommend it. The Strong is working to preserve arcade games like Time Traveler to keep them up and running while staying as close to the original hardware as possible. If you ever get a chance to try this strange piece of arcade history, I heavily recommend you give it a shot. But don't expect the greatest gameplay in the world.